Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first video of my new teacher series. If you hadn't already guessed, I am actually a primary school teacher and I'm in NQT at the moment, which means I'm newly qualified. I qualified back in July and I am almost one half term done with my first ever term of teaching my own class. So I decided to do this video as kind of an addition to the blog post I already have, because throughout my whole teacher training journey I was blogging as much as possible. I asked you guys on Twitter and Instagram if you'd like a video on my teacher training experience first, and you guys said yes, and then I'll obviously also be doing a video talking about my experience as being a teacher. Do excuse me for this video because obviously I'm new to filming in general, but this time I'm actually using a light, not like professional lighting like most YouTubers, but just a light on top of my camera, and it's a little bit bright in my face, so hopefully this is going to go well. I did the school-based route, which meant I didn't go to an actual university to do my training, but I still have a Pgce alongside it. I chose this route because it's very hands-on and you're actually with one school for most of the week, between 3 to 4 days of the week, every single week. So you basically see a class evolve and see a year group evolve from start to finish, and then you have a cross-phase period in the middle where you have to do the opposite key stage. And I chose that course because I thought it was the best way for me to really understand how it is like to be a teacher, and get that hands-on experience that you need, and for me to kind of move away from university, because I came straight out of university and had decided already that I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't want to do it the university route. I'm not a huge fan of university learning, of the whole lecture system. It's okay, it was fine for 3 years, but I didn't want to do a repeat of that. I wanted a really hands-on course which would help me to completely be in the mindset of a teacher and to work closely with teachers on a regular basis and to build bonds as well. And I really feel like I did manage to do that in my teacher training year. I think the first question that people always tend to ask is the Pgce route or teacher training in general as hard as people say it is? And I'm not here to sugarcoat it. It's very difficult. It's very challenging, by far the most challenging year of my life so far. And I think it's very hard and they put you through a lot because teaching in general is a very tough job. It's a job which people do because they love the children and because they want to see children succeed in more ways than just academically. They care about children, they want to see them have a brighter future, and they want to be a role model in their lives. That nobody teaches for the money at all, and certainly nobody teaches for the hours. A very small group of people nowadays honestly still believe that teachers have it easy with the amount of holidays they get, but actually the hours that teachers work in order to get those holidays definitely means that we work very hard for those holidays. For example, most people in my team at the moment are in school before 8 o'clock every day, and we tend to leave after 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. every day. And it's long hours and it's a tiring job. Tiring, not exhausting, but it is tiring and it can be exhausting sometimes. So I asked you guys to ask me some questions because I have already done a post all about my teacher training experience, like I said, and I'll link them all below. So I thought I'd tackle specific questions in this video. And the first one came from Iqra Begum, who is a YouTuber as well, and she's amazing. She does like such great videos and she always puts up reviews really quickly. So definitely check her out if you haven't already. Her first question is, which Pgce did you decide to take? So I've already talked about the fact that I've decided to take the school-based route rather than university route, because I personally prefer the idea of having a hands-on course versus a more traditional city and university route. There's nothing wrong with either of them, but I personally do think that if you're going into primary teaching, there's just so much benefit to having done the school-based route. Especially, I can't speak from the secondary side because I've not done that training, and I don't have any desire to be a secondary school teacher at any time soon in my life. But yeah, so I think I would definitely recommend the school-based route if you're thinking about primary teaching. The second question is, once you were done with your Pgce, were you scared to actually teach a whole class by yourself? So basically, when you get a job, you hopefully will get a job before before summer, so you have that 2 days of like meet the teacher, meet the team day, which I had in July. And obviously there are going to be nerves. Of course there's going to be nerves, and I was nervous to a certain extent, but at the same time, by that point I'd actually already qualified, and I'd come out, alhamdulillah, with an outstanding grade. I was graded an outstanding newly qualified teacher, so that gave me such a big boost of confidence. And also in general, the experience that I had in my homeschool and the sort of relationships that I built with the teachers around me and the children in my class, in my training class, it really helped me to believe that, you know what, you've got this and you can do this and you can be a great teacher for any group of children, really. So of course there was nerves when it was the meet the teacher day, and I was more reserved as well. I wasn't necessarily like myself. I was kind of just observing them more and seeing what my new class were going to be like, and I think they probably felt a similar way because I was a brand new teacher to this school. They hadn't seen me before, they'd seen the other teachers before, so you know, I was a stranger to them, they were strangers to me. Yeah, the nerves quickly disappear because actually after you've been doing a whole year of training to be a teacher and you've had so many observations as well, because I'll touch on that at a point in this video, but the amount of observations you have in your training year is intense. You just kind of just fall back into it, and I just picked up on it straight away. Even though it had been 6 weeks since I taught, I was just so like quick to pick up back to it, and I loved it. And I can honestly say, I mean, little preview for my next teaching video when I talk about my first half term, but I can honestly say that I've had, alhamdulillah, such a positive half term so far. Rani Rose, who is my lovely friend, she asked, how are you so amazing? I'm really not, but thank you so much. Shivali asks, what do you exactly do within the PGCE? Are there assignments, etc.? That's a good question. So the PGCE side of things, first of all, I'll just explain what the benefit is of having a PGCE, because you can definitely become a teacher without one. But the PGCE essentially entitles you to teach anywhere in the world. It's a recognised qualification, so it means that if at the end of this year, if I decided that I wanted to pack up and move to Dubai, effectively I could, because I have that qualification that I can teach abroad. So it's a really good qualification to have, and it's something that I always knew I wanted, because that's one of my goals, hopefully in the future, to move abroad and experience life abroad and teaching abroad as well. So yeah, the PGCE was a very important part of me deciding how I wanted to become a teacher. And I also love the fact that I could still do the school-based route of being really involved in everything whilst also doing the PGCE. PGCE itself was actually only 2 assignments. They were quite big assignments. They were about 5,000 words each, so effectively it was like a dissertation, but it was nowhere near as difficult as doing an actual dissertation. There's one that's going to be based on theory, and there's one that's going to be more based on your practice, and you carry something out and you see how it works within your lessons and how it impacts your practice. I actually found it a lot easier than university because it was so practical and it very much related to what we were doing. I think the university that my teacher training school was with, it was okay. The hard thing about it really was the fact that when you're at university, you always have your lecturers, you know, like a few doors down. You can go and knock on their door if they're around and if they're free, and you can ask them for support. But obviously when you're doing it with a teacher training school, the university that they're linked with, that you don't necessarily have that instant support. But we did have an email address that we could contact if we were unsure, and every single one of us on the course passed our PGCE. So yeah, I have to say overall it was a really positive experience for me anyway. I passed, alhamdulillah, and I've also got a third of a master's now. So if I wanted to do 2 more thirds of a master's, I'd have a full master's in a few years. The assignments are very much university based as well, so you still have to reference, but I found the team who were with the teacher training school to be pretty supportive, and in the grand scheme of things it wasn't necessarily the assignments that were causing me stress personally. I know other people in the course were really stressed out, especially those who had left education years ago and were just not used to writing at all, but I feel like if you've written like a university essay in the last couple of years, you'll be absolutely fine with the PGCE side of it, so don't let that put you off at all. Mahira D asks, when did you start applying for the PGCE? How was the process? So I started applying, I believe, when I was in second year, when I got to around January time, that's when I started looking into it. And I will leave a blog post again below talking about the whole application process, because I've talked about it in full there, and talked about the whole UCAS side of things as well, and how you find courses that are near to you. The process was pretty easy, it was pretty straightforward. It did help that within university they were doing talks about how to get into teaching. That kind of sparked the whole thing off, and it made me realise, okay, if I want to get into teaching, now I need to think about it not in third year, I need to think about it actually in second year, like towards the end of second year especially, so you can apply for it within third year. I remember I had my interview for the teacher training school that I applied to in third year in January. So I started thinking about it at the end of second year, had my interview a couple of months later, knew I got the place in January, and then I started doing the rest of the things you need to do for teacher training, which includes skills tests and things like that, which I'll get onto because I know there's a few questions about that. Sorry, I'm going to butcher this username. It's Hapsafithal. Asked, what was the interview process like and what types of questions did they ask you? So I'm going to assume that you're asking this in relation to the teacher training interview, so I'm going to cast my mind back to that. So the interview process is a whole day thing, and basically you're told about 2 weeks in advance, I believe, but I did have it all in my blog post. If you want more information, I definitely recommend reading that because I go through it in detail. But you're told 2 weeks in advance what you're expected to do on a day, and normally it will be running a small lesson, like a mini lesson, and they'll tell you which resources they're going to give you, and they'll give you any specifications, and they'll also tell you the year group. So you're supposed to plan that, and it's only a very short amount of time, and that will normally be observed by like 2 members of staff. I actually had the head teacher and the deputy head observing me for that part. That was fine actually. I was lucky because my sister at the time, she was also in year 5, so I was like, what would you find interesting, and what would you like to do? I was trying to think, how could I still make it educational but then also get the children really engaged, and we ended up doing like a sort of academic quiz. And they did really enjoy that, and then every time they got a question right, they got a certain number of bricks, and there was a little competition at the end on who could build the best bridge. So that was what I did for my teaching element, and there was also a part where you had to read a book to the whole class, and that's obviously testing your classroom presence, your confidence as well. But they're very aware that this is the first time that you've seen these children before, this is the first time that you're sort of doing this in front of like different adults as well. It might be the first time, it might not be, you might have already had that experience, but they are aware of you and your circumstances, and they will take that into account. I read a Michael Mafergo book because he's a fantastic author, Michael Mafergo. I read one of his books and I think they really enjoyed that. Moving on to the next question, the same person said, where did you do your Pgce, secondary or primary? I did it in primary. I did consider secondary for like 5 seconds because I love psychology and I wouldn't have minded being a psychology teacher, but I honestly feel like I'm too young at the moment, like myself personally, I feel like I'm too young to be a secondary school teacher, and I also love the primary school element of it. I love the fun of it, building bonds every day, being in the same class, nurturing relationships. That's what I really enjoy, so that's why I decided to go for primary. Is it as stressful as everyone says it is? Is it a doable year? Sorry for the load of questions. No, please don't apologise, it's absolutely fine. Is it as stressful as everyone says it is? Yes it is. It is the most stressful year that I've been through, and I think part of it is because it's the first time that I was working full time. I was getting up every single day about 6:30, and I was coming home between 5:30 to 6:30, sometimes even later. When I did my crossfades, it was even later than that. So it was an exhausting year, and I think maybe if you've had experience in full-time work already and you're then changing careers to teaching, you might not find it as exhausting, but you still will find it stressful, because the other thing about teaching that I think no one really thinks about until you're in the job is the fact that when you're teaching, you always have to be like alert and on the go, and you're always looking for, is everyone listening? Is everyone understanding? Who needs my help right now? Is everything okay? You're like in charge of the class and you're continuously on the go. And so if you're feeling a little bit down, if you're feeling not very well, if your voice is going like mine is, that kind of doesn't matter, because you have to park it at the door and get through the day. And I think that's what is so exhausting about teaching, is that you just don't really get a break. Even at break time and lunchtime, often you don't really get a break. And like I said, it has to be one of those things where you do it because you love it. And I think that's what people can be put off by. But also the amount of paperwork that's involved with teacher training is pretty intense, and the amount of observations. So when I got to the end of my teacher training year, when I was looking at how the observations were logged online, I had a total of 55 observations, which is a lot for a whole year. And it's even more when you think about the fact that almost every single one of those observations had a 5-page lesson plan attached to it. Yes, I didn't always fill out all 5 pages, but for the most part I did. And that's what makes it so tiring, is the amount of preparation for the lessons, and there's just so much learning involved as well. So it was such an enjoyable year from a personal growth point of view. I basically went from here to here in confidence, and in my confidence, my ability to teach, because I proved to myself that I could do it. Is it exhausting? Yes. Is it stressful? Yes. Is it doable? Yes, 100%, as long as you're going into it for the right reasons, and as long as you're, like I said, as long as you're really doing it because you care about children and you really, really want to make their lives better. If you're doing it for that, it's totally a doable year, because that's what's in the back of your mind all the time. But if you're doing it for the holidays, no, it's not going to be a doable year. You're going to feel the need to give up. You're going to feel like you can't cope. And yeah, I would definitely reevaluate why you're wanting to go into teaching if you're considering it at the moment. Next question from the same person is, can you work your way up to teaching easily, like head of etc, etc? I actually don't know. That's a good question. I know that every single NQT is placed on the same pay scale, and then you basically increase pay every single year as long as you're meeting your performance targets. So that's the nice thing about teaching, is that your pay does increase every year, provided you're coping and doing, relatively well. But I'm not sure in terms of working your way up to teaching. I'm sure it's not too difficult, but you probably have to put in a good few years of dedication in order to get there. And in terms of having a family and teaching, I genuinely do not know how people do it. I, at the moment, don't have a family of my own. Obviously, I'm part of a family. I have a mum, dad, alhamdulillah, like I have siblings, but I don't have my own family, and I don't have my own huge responsibilities yet, which is why I'm just about coping with the workload and the stress of teaching. But I feel like if you have children and you're teaching, you're just another level of amazing, because that is just Superwoman times 2 in my eyes, or Superman times 2. It's fantastic. Wahida Malik asks, how did you prepare yourself to pass the literacy and numeracy skills test? I know this can be a massive obstacle for a lot of people. So I actually don't think I panicked about it as much as maybe I should have. What I did essentially was I went onto the UK website, typed in skills tests UK teaching, and it comes up with some practice tests. And I think there's like 3 sets, maybe even more. And basically I did the first one. I did awful in my maths. I did okay in my literacy. And then I stepped away from it and waited a few days. And then I did my second one. But this time I gave myself enough time to do it. And I did okay. And then my third one, I passed both of them, the practice ones. And then I think I just read up on it as well. And basically it's just really important to use the pen and paper they give you to jot anything down, and make sure you use up all the time that you can and don't rush it. You are timed, I think that's what panics people, but honestly it's not as difficult as you might have heard it to be. You just have to practice the online ones that they give you, especially because then you get to see how it's formatted, how it's laid out, so when you come to do the real thing, it's not as daunting. You can also buy books as well for it. I didn't buy any books, so I can't recommend any, but I would honestly say use the internet. It's your best friend in this case. There's so many people who've written about it and who give lots of good advice. I actually don't think that advice that I just gave was that good, but essentially just don't panic and don't overthink it. A lot of these tests, I think, especially as adults, when we have to take them, we kind of panic, but actually it's just there to see that you can do it. And you know you can do it. You know you can do this level of maths. You know you can do this level of English. You might not like the top level of maths in primary school because it's not actually that easy, but you can still do it. You wouldn't have managed to get your degree without that. So yeah, just have confidence in yourself and just practice. Take your time, deep breaths, take water as well with you, that definitely helps. And just think, well, if I haven't passed it the first time, then I get a second shot and a third shot too, so you'll be fine.